February 21, 2024. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart using NinjaTrader 8. This is what the chart looked like today. It was a very slow day up until about 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock Pacific Standard is when the FOMC meeting minutes for the last month's FOMC meeting came out, but it wasn't really that surprising. Everybody kind of already knew what the news was going to be. So right around here, you can see it kind of had this big whipsaw highlight where it actually occurred from about 11 to about, I would say, 5 minutes after that. And most of the time, right in the early morning to probably about that time, trading was all contained within a 10 to 12 point trading range. Then, as you can see, it broke out. So this is a pre-market high, pre-market low. It broke out, and it moved down in a sell-off, and then right here, about 30 minutes before the end of the day, there was this gigantically strong rally, and then into the close. And into the close, I can only attribute this to NVIDIA's earnings report. Now, NVIDIA this whole year has been pretty unstoppable, very strong. So it's part of the Magnificent Seven. There's like Amazon and Apple and Microsoft, a couple of others. And they had a very good earnings. So if you look at their charts, they actually skyrocketed. And I think it caused this big knee-jerk reaction for the rest of the market because when NVIDIA went up, a bunch of other tech companies, semiconductors, AMD, all those guys also went up. So I think it was dragging the entire market up, which is quite impressive because if you look at the NQ, it also did the same thing. I managed to take only one trade today, but even then, I didn't find very many setups or setups worth taking. And so I'm going to go through this. Hopefully it won't take too long. Also, I want to point out that even though it was in a 10-point range, roughly 10 to 12-point range for most of the time, there weren't, even though it creates some consistent highs and lows at various points, there weren't very many setups that I could find that were reliable. So volatility, the volume actually was pretty good, but it all showed up at the very end. So up until here, the volume and volume volatility were very low. Then from here all the way into the close, that's where a lot of the volume and volatility picked up, which is kind of interesting. The pre-market, it was just selling off and it created all these little swings. So at this point, I'm thinking my my thoughts were that this is going to be very bearish because it looked like it was selling off. It kind of consolidated, so I wasn't quite sure there was going to be an actual trading range at this point. Now, during the pre-market and right before it opened, I thought there were some levels of resistance, so that's why prices kept making lower highs. That's why I kind of thought that prices were going to eventually probably break down and sell off. But it did kind of start consolidating, pulling up, so I just kind of waited. So the price is starting to move. There's no good trading setups here. I thought there was some kind of resistance here and potentially a support here. It was confirmed, but it kind of bounced off. So I thought, okay, I'm in some kind of trading range, although this is a very tight 5 to 6 point trading range. Prices were kind of moving. I didn't really like this setup here. It's a new low. It's a first entry short, second entry short. It's a doji. You could argue that it is potentially a triple test, but I don't like the looks of the signal bar. Too early, so I decided to just wait. Create a new high. It's first entry long, second entry long. The second entry long, it's a little iffy because the signal bar, so when you see this, you think, okay, maybe I'm going to go long. The next candle never breaks above. It's also inside, so it doesn't really confirm your second entry long. Here it does confirm your second entry long, but now you're having doji after doji, and it's very congested, so it feels risky. Then you have a third doji, so definitely there's no trade here. If you had any doubts or any inclination to take a trade, definitely seeing these 3 dojis in a row, it's just very hard to determine which way it's going to go. Flashes down. Price then continue moving. So I noticed it was kind of interesting that it respected this double bottom here. So at the time I was thinking maybe this trading range is actually lower here, but still fit pretty well here. And I treated these two as 2 failed breakouts. Prices then continue moving. It starts moving on this yellow channel. You have a new low, first entry short, second entry short. I don't like the second entry short because the signal bar isn't very good, and this is a rather shallow kind of gradual move up. So I'm still within a trading range, and you could argue that it's going to go to the other side. But here, when you get the confirmed second entry short, it also kind of touched and created this yellow channel. So definitely you don't want to go short now because you're potentially running into resistance, and there's no clear indication to go long. You do have a failed second entry short here, but again, it just didn't feel quite right. It felt better just to wait. Drops around now, breaks out of this trading range. And here, this is my previous resistance line. I'm thinking, okay, respected it pretty well. The new high, first entry long, second entry long, these candles are just too large side by side. I mean, they're not very large, but with respect to the price action today, they are considered rather large because your total trading range, you don't know it and confirmed yet, but it's going to be only 10 points, 10 to 12 points, and these are already like taking up a big piece of those moves. Prices then continue chopping. I did see a new low. Here's first entry short, second entry short. This isn't a very good signal bar to go short on. And just throughout the day, as price action unfolded, I saw a lot of those, just like yesterday, where you saw a lot of second entries, but they weren't good second entries to take a trade because either the signal bar was bad or the setup wasn't quite right. It was kind of a weird context. Prices continue moving down. Here I do see a new low here. It's a first entry short pullback. This creates a second entry short. Now, I actually thought this might have been a possible trade because it's the break of this green channel. It broke out here. So actually it broke out here, but it didn't really, it's debatable, but it closed just outside, right? So you could say it closed just outside. Actually, opened here, closed just inside, depending on how you drew it. So it did try to make a new low, but then this is a clear break here. So you could say it's a first clear break, but I also saw it as a first entry short, second entry short, and potentially a strong kind of rejection down. EMA is kind of flattening, but I did see a potential 3 attempts up, but it's not really a clear triple test. But if this trade was taken, if it was kind of closed down here, right where the bottom is, then maybe there's a trade there that I would have felt comfortable taking. In any case, I think it was a possible trade, but something I didn't feel quite comfortable with. And as you can see, the next couple of candles moves, the next couple of candle moves prove that it was a trade that would have worked. So now it's chopping, it breaks out. This could be a failed breakout, but I couldn't find a good clean lower side. Breaks up, it starts moving into this green channel, breaks out of the green channel, kind of creates a new high here. So I do see a first entry long, and you don't really get a second entry long till down here. But by then, the setup isn't very clean anymore. You're below the EMA. You're kind of moving back into the trading range. EMA, even though it doesn't really matter too much, is kind of ugly. So the setup wasn't definitely set up here. It doesn't really convince me to take a long. It looks like you would have just gotten chopped up here. And it comes up and it tests this resistance again, which is acting pretty nicely. So at this point, I'm thinking the bottom of the trading range is either this guy here, or maybe the bottom or the pre-market. And could be potentially the top of the trading range. The top of the pre-market is just too high, so it's not really in play. Prices then move down. So now I'm watching carefully, seeing how it reacts down here. Technically, you have a new high, first entry long, second entry long, but it's just a little bit not clean. Pushes up. You have a first entry short, second entry short. This is your signal bar to go short. It doesn't look very good. Then the subsequent trigger bar, it closed too high up. It had some bulls push it all the way back up to the top. If this had closed a little bit lower, maybe way at the bottom, then it would have been more convincing to take the short, even though the signal bar isn't good. The trigger bar looked pretty good. But since this trigger bar had such a strong bullish reversal, push back up, it's something I just want to stay away from. Prices continue moving. There's a second entry long here, but it's not very good because it's bad signal bar. It is at the low of this trading range, but it doesn't look very clean. Prices then move up, chops back down. It's just ugly, ugly price action right now. It doesn't look the cleanest. You have first entry short. You have a second entry short way up here, but it's just kind of too far now. It's kind of doesn't really feel safe because you have a first entry long, goes all the way back up. You could argue this is a strong signal bar. It could be pushing all the way back to here. Maybe there's some kind of resistance here, but it just didn't feel and look right. This is a lower high, but Bad signal bar. New low, first entry long, second entry long. This second entry long is kind of in the middle of nowhere. The EMA doesn't really matter, but it just doesn't look clean. It's kind of weird context because you have two legs up. Now you potentially have one attempt up. This could be a second attempt up, but do you want to bet on that? Or it could be one leg down, push up. This could be continuation of a second leg down. So it's just unclear. So I have a new low, first entry short, second entry short. Second entry short, you would not be thinking to go short here. Then you finally have a confirmed second entry short at this point, but then if the trade doesn't still look good to go short, but then you might be thinking, oh, I'm going to go long on a failure, but it just feels too sideways. And it looks like if you did take the second entry short failure, you would have gotten filled, and it's debatable whether you would have gotten out, and you would have definitely probably gotten stopped out coming all the way down here. This is where the FOMC meeting minutes came out. Kind of told us a lot of information we already knew, so it's nothing new there. And at this time, I was looking back and I realized there wasn't very many candles. And I looked at the volume, it was quite low for this time of day. You have a new high, first entry long, second entry long. Potential trade right here. I just don't like that it's an inside bar. It just came following a very strong bearish push down, top sideways. I drew this as a trend line coming down, and I wasn't sure where the bottom was in case it was a channel. I ended up putting it down here much later. So it breaks out, it kind of touches here, and I do see this as a new low. It's a first entry short pullback, creates a second entry short. Now I thought this might have been a possible trade because the first break of this green channel push up, but then you also debate that you want this uh, this this green channel to test its low, so one attempt up. It could be coming back down. And I also noticed that it was having trouble moving back into the pre-market range. So I was thinking maybe if this is on a larger time frame, larger tick count, could have been a failed breakout. It's a failed breakout, potentially a failed breakout pullback. So it's a failed breakout, but now it's pulling back down. But I wasn't 100% sure. If you took this trade, I felt it would have been aggressive. It's a good signal bar though. I wanted a lower high to be confirmed. So this is where I get my lower high. So it's a first entry short, second entry short. Context-wise, it seems like it is starting to drift down. You had this strong push down, one attempt up. EMA is starting to come into play. Prices are kind of obeying and not pushing through the EMA. And this is where I actually saw, when I saw this, I thought this could potentially be a lower high. Then this candle formed, and what happened was it made a double matching double high. It opened here, it flashed around. I waited for the price to break below this candle, and it did. And I was actually low down here at that point when I took my trade, and I actually dropped it one tick below this guy, below here, hoping that I'd get picked up because I felt there was enough move left to probably come back to the bottom. It is a little riskier because I was basing it off the fact that it's not a failed breakout. Prices are coming down. So I was able to enter right pretty much at the close. Then it opened and it oscillated for a little bit, but shortly after it did, let me get my quick scalp. And I was just pretty happy with that. It was a slow day, so I was just happy with my one trade. I was happy I could actually get anything. And this setup wasn't even the best, so it was a little more mediocre, a little more aggressive. It looked like if you try to go for 2 points, it would have gotten it as well. But I did want to make sure I got out before I hit the low of the day because I didn't want to press my luck. Because up until then, the overall context had been trading range. So what's to say it couldn't have kind of pushed back or chopped me up a little bit more. So just pretty happy with the 1 point scalp. Prices then continue chopping. It starts moving up. It tests the highs. So then I think that trading is going to all occur in this down channel. But there's no clean setup. It's just side-by-side candles. Nothing too clean. Nothing I felt like you could really take. It's a new low here. You don't get a first entry short till about here. And now prices are clearly pushing back up. So I'm not thinking short, and I'm thinking maybe there is a long because it's starting to move back into the trading range now. But you don't get a second entry short here. You get a second entry short here and a potential failure, but I just don't like how it's already pressing so high up. So to suddenly, definitely not a short, but suddenly to think I'm going to go long felt a little dicey. And I did have this green channel drawn at this point. Ideally, this would have touched down here and closed a little bit short, then I would have known there's enough room to get to the highs. Or the EMA would have chased up this price action, bounced off the EMA, then there would have been more confidence in taking this trade. I had to leave it alone. Prices then continue moving up. At this point, I just decided, well, volume volatility were really low. I didn't see very many setups. I'm not going to try to press for anything at this point. I did see this as a new high, first entry long, potential second entry long, because it's in a nice trading range, but it's too late in the day. There's only about 10 minutes left. Is that this occurred around 12:49, so I know in the next 10 minutes, prices are probably going to get a little crazy. But this is just more marked for myself as like if this happened earlier in the day, it might have been a consideration trade because it's a good signal bar. Ideally, it would have come up and EMA would have had a nice touch on it because I also saw a triple test here. It made one attempt down, two attempts down, a third attempt, and now it's enough room before it hits the high of this trading range. But again, there's no trade here just because it's just too late in the day. Plus, this is the last 10 minutes, as you can see. There's clearly more than 10 candles, and it's just like crazy push up and move into the close of regular trading hours. And I believe this is right around when NVIDIA's numbers and earnings information came out, which kind of caused the market to really, really whipsaw up because when NVIDIA went up, a lot of other tech companies went up with it. So it kind of dragged the whole market up. Quite impressive for one company to do that. Usually the big guys like Amazon or Google or Microsoft or Apple does that, but NVIDIA itself has become quite a big player. So that was kind of interesting. I'll keep an eye on something like this for future reference if any of the other big guys. I think they all reported their earnings at this point, but seeing something like this is just quite impressive. I also believe that since all the other big companies have reported now, and NVIDIA was the last one, and if you looked at the charts, daily charts for the markets for the last few days, they have been kind of drifting sideways and kind of selling off a bit. So when something like this happens, it drags everybody up because I think there was just money waiting on the sidelines. So, anyways, hopefully that was helpful.